My mom yelled, "You have 48 hours to get your stuff out. That house is your sister's now." The words cracked across the living room like a whip. My sister leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, lips curled into that smug half-smile she wore whenever she knew the odds were stacked in her favor. I stood frozen by the staircase, my suitcase still zipped in the corner. The light above flickered, harsh, yellow, exposing every shadow, every judgment. My name is Clara Jameson. I'm 27. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. The clock on the wall ticked louder than their voices. Mom's hands were trembling as she pointed toward the door, but not from weakness, from finality. My sister's perfume lingered, the same cheap lavender she wore in high school, yet somehow it filled the whole room like an eviction notice written in air. I wanted to scream, "Why her? Why not me?" But silence felt louder. I swallowed my words and picked up the cracked photo frame from the mantelpiece. Dad, long gone, smiling in a way none of us remembered anymore. The glass had splintered across his face, a fault line through his eyes. I slipped it into my bag without asking. Have you ever had family cross your boundaries? Let me know in the comments. That night, while they slept, I folded clothes into neat piles, each soundless movement a refusal to shatter. By morning, the house didn't feel like mine anymore, and maybe that was the point. The morning sun slid through the blinds in slats of gold, but the house felt colder than any winter I'd ever known. My suitcase sat by the door, packed neat, ready. My sister's laughter floated from the kitchen, sharp, victorious. She wasn't even subtle anymore. "Hope you didn't scratch the floor when you dragged your stuff," she said, sipping from the coffee mug Dad once favored. The handle was chipped, and for a second, I wanted to snatch it back. But I stayed still, clutching the strap of my bag. Mom walked in, avoiding my eyes. "You'll figure things out, Clara. Your sister deserves the house. She's stable, responsible." Her words tumbled like excuses she'd rehearsed for years. I wanted to shout, "Stable? Responsible?" This was the girl who wrecked her first car and begged me for the money to cover the repairs. This was the woman who lived off my late-night tutoring sessions when I pulled in side jobs to pay bills. But my voice caught. Silence was safer. On the table, a set of brass keys glimmered, the house keys. Mom slid them toward my sister. "It's yours now." The sound of metal scraping would ring in my ears, a coronation I wasn't invited to. I reached for the cracked photo frame hidden in my bag. Dad's fractured smile stayed back. Something in that broken glass whispered, "This story isn't finished." I tightened my grip. If silence was my weapon, patience would be my revenge. 2 days blurred into hushed packing and forced smiles. I folded my life into cardboard boxes stacked like gravestones in the hallway. Each one labeled in my handwriting, each one heavy with things they no longer wanted tied to this house. The night before my deadline, the air shifted. My sister strutted in with bags of new decor, curtains, rugs, even paint swatches. She spread them across the dining table, claiming the space like a queen redecorating her throne. "You'll be gone soon," she chirped, twirling one of the swatches between her fingers. "Might as well make it cozy for me." Her words pierced, but I pressed my lips shut. The silence wasn't surrender anymore. It was a shield. She wanted a fight, something to gloat about later. I refused her that satisfaction. Mom hovered in the doorway, arms crossed, pretending to busy herself with her phone. Not once did she meet my eyes. It was easier for her to look away than face the betrayal she was endorsing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the floor of my room, my soon-to-be ex-room, and stared at the cracked ceiling. The photo frame pressed against my chest. Dad's broken smile stared through me. The glass cut into my skin, shallow but sharp. And in that sting, I understood the house wasn't just bricks. It was memory. It was witness. And they were erasing me from it. But erasures leave shadows, and shadows can speak louder than light. The deadline arrived with a chill in the air. A storm brewed outside, rain pattering against the windows like a slow drumroll for my exit. My boxes were stacked neatly by the door, my suitcase zipped, my silence intact. I walked into the living room to find my sister already lounging on the couch, flipping through a glossy magazine. She didn't look up. 48 hours are up, she said casually, like announcing the weather. Mom stood nearby, arms folded, pretending the decision wasn't crushing me. She muttered, "It's for the best, Clara. You'll land on your feet." I almost laughed. Land on my feet? After being shoved off the edge? My chest burned, but I stayed quiet, my hand brushing against the cracked photo frame tucked safely inside my bag. As I lifted the first box, my sister finally looked at me. "You still wear that perfume?" she asked suddenly, her tone half mocking, half nostalgic. It was the same scent I'd worn since college, lavender and cedar. A decoy question, meant to seem human. But it carried no softness, only mockery wrapped in familiarity. I didn't answer. The silence between us stretched, thicker than the storm outside. Box by box, I carried pieces of my life out into the damp air. Each step felt like a funeral march. But funerals are not endings. They are beginnings in disguise, and I had already begun preparing for mine. By the time the last box was set in the back seat of my car, night had settled over the neighborhood. The rain had stopped, but the air smelled of wet earth and something raw, like change. I sat behind the wheel, but I didn't start the engine. Instead, I looked back at the house, every window glowing as if mocking me. Through the glass, I could see my sister already parading around the living room, rearranging furniture that wasn't hers yesterday but somehow belonged to her today. She held up a wine glass in triumph, Mom clapping faintly as though celebrating a victory. My exile was their entertainment. I gripped the cracked photo frame tighter. Dad's fractured face stared back. The fault line through his smile seemed sharper tonight, like a warning. I remembered his words once, when Mom wasn't around. A home isn't given. It's held. At the time, I thought he meant love. Now, I wasn't so sure. I didn't drive away. Instead, I slid the car keys into my lap and leaned back. My silence had carried me this far, but silence wasn't empty. It was filling, building, turning into something else. Resolve. Inside, my sister twirled a set of keys on her finger, laughing. She had no idea I was watching from the dark street. The house wasn't hers yet. Not really. It was a stage, and stages demand an audience. Soon, her show would begin, and I would be waiting in the wings. The next morning, I returned before dawn. The sky was pale gray, the street slick from the night storm. I parked a block away, carrying nothing but the cracked photo frame tucked inside my coat. The silence of the early hour wrapped around me as I walked toward the house that had been mine yesterday and a stranger's today. The curtains were drawn, but I could see the faint outline of my sister pacing the living room. She was on the phone, her voice sharp even through the glass. "Yes, the house is mine now. No, she's gone. Don't worry about her." Her words cut deeper than I expected. Gone. I was standing right there. I pressed my palm against the cold gate, watching the rainwater drip from its iron bars. I remembered every corner of that yard, the swing Dad built, the flowerbed Mom used to ignore. Memory lived in the soil here, whether they wanted to admit it or not. The photo frame in my coat shifted, its cracked glass biting into my side. I pulled it out and studied Dad's fractured smile. The break across his eyes looked like lightning frozen in time. A reminder, storms pass, but they leave marks. I whispered to him, though no one could hear, "I won't fight them their way, but I will be remembered." Inside, my sister laughed, oblivious. She thought she had won, but the quiet has a way of rewriting endings. Evening draped itself over the house when I finally stepped back inside. My sister had left the front door unlocked, careless, confident. The smell of new paint and cheap wine lingered, clashing with the scent of the lavender candle I'd once kept on the mantel. She was already rewriting the air. She didn't hear me at first. She was humming, arranging a vase of flowers in the living room, her phone buzzing on the table. Then she turned, startled. "Clara?" What are you doing here? I set the cracked photo frame gently on the coffee table. Dad's fractured smile stared up at both of us. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. This was never just your house, I said quietly. My voice didn't tremble, though my chest did. It's full of him. And me. You can't repaint that away. She rolled her eyes, masking unease. Oh, please. Stop being dramatic. Mom gave it to me. End of story. But her voice faltered when her eyes landed on the photo frame, the jagged glass catching the lamp's glow. She reached for it and pricked her finger on the edge. A drop of blood welled up, dark and red against the broken pane. She yanked her hand back. For the first time, she looked small. You don't get to erase me, I whispered. This house will always remember. The silence that followed wasn't mine this time. It was hers. The next morning, Mom arrived, holding grocery bags like a peace offering. She stepped into the living room and froze. The cracked photo frame sat in the center of the table, its broken glass reflecting the pale light. My sister was hunched on the couch, a bandage wrapped around her finger, staring at it like it might speak. Mom's eyes darted to me. Clara, you're still here. I met her gaze evenly. I was never gone. For the first time, my sister didn't jump in with her usual arrogance. Her voice was smaller, tired. Why did you bring that photo back? I looked at the fractured image of Dad, his smile divided by a fault line. Because he's still part of this house. And so am I. You can't inherit walls without inheriting memories. They don't bend to signatures or keys. Mom set the bags down, her hands trembling. Maybe we rushed. Maybe this wasn't fair. Silence settled between us, heavy but not hostile. My sister glanced at the frame again, her lips pressed tight. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker in her eyes, not victory. I didn't demand an apology. I didn't need to. The weight of their choices was finally visible, and they would have to carry it. I rose, letting the quiet stretch. You wanted me erased, but all you did was write me deeper into these walls. I walked out, leaving the cracked glass behind as my witness.